Greetings, Mavericks and new viewers. Tonight, direct and live from the Maverick News Network World Studios. This is Maverick News with Rick Walker.
Welcome back to the Maverick News Channel, everyone. Our internet problems seem to be fixed, at least for the moment. I apologize, we weren't here last night. No internet again last night. Thank you, Bell Media, for nothing again last night. But they did send a technician around again. And after they were done planting all the bugs in my house to spy on me and digitally track all of my movements and install probably some covert tracking devices on my internet modem, they got it working. So we're back in business tonight, just in time for the kickoff of the great race to replace Justin Trudeau. We have that. We have some highlights from that interview that Mark Carney did on the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. We have Stephen Harper weighing in on this conversation, and we have the ongoing concerns about Donald Trump and those threatened 25% tariffs across the board, and all the talk of the 51st state. Doug Ford, Ontario Premier, picking up where Alberta's Premier left off yesterday, with more concerns, more comments. Ford saying today that massive job losses could be literally just days away with the inauguration of Donald Trump set for next week. So stay with me. We have all that and more coming up right here on the Maverick News Channel. And if we have time, we might go to the phones tonight. So stay with me.
You know, someone very profoundly once said many years ago that if fascism ever comes to America, it'll come in the name of liberalism.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth.
The entire world is watching.
Every dictator, every crazy dictator in the world is watching. The world is watching. On TV,
the entire world is watching.
On social media.
But the entire world is watching, and yes, they are seeing what we have apparently bravely been willing to say that others are thinking.
Stand for freedom. Literally stand for freedom. Let's get this done. The entire world is watching.
We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars.
Maverick News. Maverick News. Maverick News.
Let me have more control of my own destiny.
The world is watching. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals. Defenders of individual rights and freedoms. Credible. Trusted. Grounded in reality. Maverick News. Maverick News. Defending free speech. Free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So the race is on to replace Justin Trudeau. I know people are saying he's never going to step down. Yeah, he's going. He's going. It's just a matter of time. And they're all lining up. And some of them aren't. And maybe that's of even more note. Christy Clark, Francois Philippe Champagne, they have now announced that they're not going to enter the race to replace Justin Trudeau. But we are expecting the former finance minister who abandoned ship right near the end there, Chrystia Freeland. She's expected to take a run at this thing and make that announcement in the next few days. Karina Gould and Mark Carney, the former Bank of Canada governor and Bank of England governor. Yeah, Carney, he's the front runner, and there was a poll of some kind conducted within the Liberal ranks indicating today it was revealed that the majority of Liberals seem to prefer Carney. It makes it sound like he's like a carny in a circus. And politics is something of a circus, isn't it? Seems the Liberals, at this point anyway, prefer Carney over Freeland, according to the polling. And I can see why. It's because she carries so much baggage. Carney, even though he was the Bank of Canada governor and a Liberal, really has not been part of the government directly, and so does not have all of that baggage to carry around from the last 9 years with Justin Trudeau. A little harder to blame him, and he has that that aura or the cliched image of being a banker guy, an economist kind of guy, because he ran the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. So no doubt he has a lot of knowledge, right? Well, he also seems to have some political savvy. He made an appearance, which I wasn't expecting, on the Jon Stewart show, the Daily Show with Jon Stewart. And it seems like he kind of announced his intention to run, but it's not official. He didn't really come out and say it. Here's the clip right near the end where Stewart really wants him to declare that he's running for the leadership on his program, but can't quite pull him in.
Have you decided to run yet? Because a lot of people in the Liberal Party in Canada have said specifically they will not run. I think they fear the headwinds in this election. Well, have you decided?
Can I say one thing on that?
Please.
I want to defend, because this is a very important point. So if you look at our foreign minister, Melanie Joly, our finance minister, Dominic LeBlanc, Steve McKinnon, who's our labor minister, they are not running, in part because there's a crisis right now because of the threat of the Trump tariffs. So
they're saying I won't run because I want to focus on.
They're country before party and personal ambition, and it's absolutely
right.
And the applause sign goes on, and
so
cue the crowd.
Do you say?
Well, I don't have a job.
I don't have a job.
Yeah.
You don't have a job presently.
No, I do, but it's UN
You're
dollar a day.
You're being so coy with me. I love the chase. I love this cat and mouse.
Well, we had to shake things up.
We are having we've spiced up our relationship tremendously throughout this interview. So, congratulations on announcing on this program that you are running to be the leader. We seal it with a handshake. Mark Carney.
So that's not an official announcement, but it's pretty clear that, yeah, this guy's, he's going to take a run at Justin Trudeau's job. He may well be the next Prime Minister of Canada. not elected by the people, elected by the party because of the way the system works. A lot of people very critical of that, and I understand it. That being said, I think there have only been 3 or 4 instances where this has happened, where the party leader steps aside, and then through the leadership selection process, you end up with that person being the prime minister. And a lot of people are very uncomfortable with it. Now, I have to say that historically, as that happens, there is always a fair amount of public pressure and even internal political pressure on the government then to call an election. And that has always generally happened. So historically, it's always a short time after when an election is called. So the sitting government with the newly minted prime minister, minted by the party, in this case the Liberals, they come back into session, they probably have a throne speech, they may even govern for a month or 2 or 3 or whatever, but very shortly thereafter there's an election called. And in this case, I think that will also be the case because there is so much pressure on the Liberals to call an election. Just because Justin Trudeau steps aside doesn't mean they're going to be able to sidestep that. There's just so much public pressure and such a call for it. And Jagmeet Singh of the NDP, the Bloc, I don't think they're going to continue to support a minority Liberal government in this situation. And with the new leader there, the new leader also needs a mandate, right? And he needs a seat. So you can expect an election real soon, really, really soon. I'm not entirely comfortable with the way the Liberals run their leadership conventions and their races. There are reports out there that people are actually maliciously and as I think sort of as pranks and to make a point, they've been registering their pets to vote in the Liberal leadership race. I think it's true. It is being caught. The Liberals are, they did issue a statement saying that those sort of pets will be removed from the list of eligible delegates to vote, cast votes in the upcoming leadership race for the party. The other thing, though, is that according to the Liberal Party rules, you don't even need to be a Canadian citizen to cast a ballot. So you are actually going to have people voting who are not Canadian citizens, who will then be part of the process of selecting Canada's next prime minister, because that person will end up in office without actually having to go through a formal Canadian election. This is a little flaw, I would say, in the Canadian system, but this situation is short-lived. I also think that there should be probably some changes made, and this is just my opinion, but I think there should be changes made to prevent parties from allowing people who are not Canadian citizens to select leaders of parties. This has been an ongoing issue for a long time. That being said, at least they're going through a leadership process. There are some other parties out there that sort of put forward a sort of, I think, fake leadership races, or really have just had confirmation exercises. I mean, even within the PPC, they really, the last time, after the last election, in my opinion, I think they should have had a more robust or a more thorough leadership review. And they should have given alternatives to Maxime Bernier an opportunity to come forward and challenge him for the leadership. But they really didn't do that. They just sent out a questionnaire asking the membership if they think Maxime Bernier should just stay on as leader. And he overwhelmingly received a positive vote of confidence, I guess. But there was no other choice. Like, there was no ballot. There was no leadership confirmation selection process. So there was no alternative offered up. At least here we have some alternatives coming around the corner to meet this process. And so it begins. But, and I think the Conservatives, they have their own issues when it comes to selecting leaders. We saw in their last leadership selection process that they were purging candidates that they didn't want, finding technicalities to get rid of them. We don't really want that guy. We don't want Grant Abraham, so he's gone. And we don't want Joseph Bourgault, so here's a technicality, even though they put up the money and to enter the race. No, there's a technical problem right there. You're out. So there were those kinds of issues there. And, the NDP, I'd have to look more deeply into their process to find something to criticize there. But I'm pretty sure there's something. All these parties have some sort of issue. So the Liberals, yeah, they've got some credibility issues there, I think, with the public, especially people who are not Liberals looking from the outside in, seeing this thing play out. Now, of course, if you want to have an impact on who the next Liberal leader is, all you have to do is join the party, and then you could vote and vote for the worst candidate if you wanted to. I mean, that's also part of the process, and maybe part of the flaw, maybe part of the the good part of the process, right? But because you can join more than one party, you can join them all. Yeah, and then you'll be a political zebra, wearing every political stripe. So, who else is running potentially? So Freeland, we have Carney, we have Chandra Arya, the guy we showed you on the program the other night, who speaks his native language, I think from India, and then English, but not French. And Frank Baylis is also on the list of contenders. And they have to declare their intention to run by January 23rd. And then they are going to announce their new leader after a truncated race on March the 9th. So the process is in motion. And it's just a matter of time. Justin T is on the way out. Trust me, he's going. There's no way he's sticking around now. I just can't see it. And Carney, I have to say, I was a little uncomfortable seeing him on The Daily Show that way, because it's a U.S. show, and there's something almost ironic about it, given that Canada right now is potentially fighting for its very existence, or will be within a matter of days, because of Trump's tariff threat. If he follows through on that, we could see devastating consequences up here. And so where does Carney go? He goes down to the U.S. and appears on The Daily Show, not a Canadian program, a U.S. late night comedy show, talk show thing, which all those late night shows, like even The Tonight Show, they've all become political. And there's a Canadian, the next Canadian Prime Minister, essentially announcing that he is going to, that guy could be the next Prime Minister, and he basically announced his intent to run on a U.S. program. I find that just a little bit weird, especially given the current set of circumstances. Why? I guess because they have such a large audience, and Canada really doesn't have an equivalent kind of program like that. The other thing is, there is a war on it. It is a third world war. It's a fifth generation warfare is being employed here. And what's the war that's really being fought, which I think it's lost on people. It isn't a conventional war. Even what's going on in Ukraine, with Russia. That is a war of ideas. And what's going on even here in Canada, and we are at war, make no mistake. We are at war, but it's an information war. It's a war of ideas here as well. And what's really going on is there is this struggle, this battle between, I would say, this new sort of political movement and ideology that is still, I think it's beginning now to emerge and become a little bit more visible to people in a way that people will begin to understand it more. But it's not these conventional, communist, fascist, conservative, liberal sort of ideas, socialism. It's this converged communo-fascism, or maybe even kind of a populism over here. I'm not sure exactly how it's gelling here in North America yet, but it is this very traditional, ultra-Orthodox, conservative movement. And when I say conservative, I don't mean conservative in the traditional sense, but there's a convergence happening on the one side that combines the far left, the far right, and some conservative elements against liberalism, but not liberalism like Justin Trudeau, Liberal Party liberalism. I'm talking about progressive liberalism, which has taken liberalism and morphed it into something that is a little bit new as well. Maybe a lot new, because it's very progressive. It's progressive liberals, neoliberalism, if you want to call it that. So there are these two forces at play right now, and there is an actual war. And it has not been obvious to people. People have not really been able to, I think, make sense of this, because the vast, like 99% of people out there are still sort of stuck in the left-right political, idea, with fascists over on the right and liberals over on the left, or socialists or communists rather, on the left. It's not really like that. I'm just saying there's this real battle brewing. So Mark Carney going down and appearing on The Daily Show, in a way, kind of makes sense, because the battle, this war, is really not just isolated to Canada or to the United States. It's happening across the border. It's happening globally. And Carney is one of these, I think, sort of neoliberals, maybe a little bit more on the traditional conservative side, but he's definitely a progressive. And he is with the Liberal Party, which has become neoliberal and does embrace these neoliberal progressive ideas. But the biggest problem in the long run, I think, is that the war being waged against the neoliberals and the progressives, the people waging that war, ultimately, the people at the core of that movement, they're not just against neoliberalism, they're against classical liberalism as well, all liberalism. And that will actually come and engulf a portion of the people on the other side who are fighting the progressives, but ultimately a lot of these people are going to be swallowed up by this movement as well, because they're going to come for some of those folks. Right now, the enemy of the core group's enemies they've made friends, but it's going to blow apart. That's because it's largely a populist movement, attracting a lot of people from various political stripes to create this converged force, which is being unleashed against the progressive left. I don't know if any of that's making any sense to anybody. I hope it is. I hope it's resonating, because this is going to play out. You're going to start to see it in a more clear way. And I think within maybe even weeks, it's going to be a little bit more evident to people that there is an actual war afoot here. And you can see it too at the today. And what we're going to talk a little bit more about this Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing today. It's front and center right there. You can see it. You can see it in the way that the people in the MAGA camp who are now coming into power, they're insisting on political loyalty from bureaucrats, from long-term government employees. They want loyalty to Trump and the MAGA agenda, or maybe some of these things even coming, I think, from Agenda 2025. Even though Trump said, "Oh no, you don't know anything about it." Well, some of this stuff is already beginning to find its way into what Trump is doing, and his surrogates, his players within government as they prepare to assume power next week. I'm following it very, very, closely, and it's still very early because he's not even in office yet, but we'll see how this plays out. There is a real battle brewing. Calls for some of these Democrats and others to be thrown in jail, and they're going to go after him. I was even watching Dan Bongino, and I should have queued the clip up. It was what were his words? He basically said that it's like no holds barred, and I'm paraphrasing now, but it's like we're going like no mercy basically, and he's like grab them all and turf them, purge them from the system. I guess that's their method of purging the deep state. We'll see how it plays out. It's beginning to make me feel a little uneasy because it feels, in some cases, more like revenge and vengeance than justice or a productive, quality political process. This feels very, very different. There's like a headhunt going on. And it feels nasty, I gotta say. So we'll see, man. We'll see. Stay with me. Be right back.
Maverick News. The world is watching.
So I'm gonna get to Doug Ford, Ontario Premier, and Canada's current Finance Minister, Dominic LeBlanc, in a moment. But I want to tee that up with what happened with Danielle Smith yesterday, because we didn't get a chance to share that with you. But here, Danielle Smith goes down to Mar-a-Lago, meets with Donald Trump, along with Kevin O'Leary, and I think Jordan Peterson was at the party as well. So she did speak with Donald Trump, and she said she was on like vacation, and then pops up at Mar-a-Lago. I guess she took her husband with her. Some people saying, well, who's paying for the vacation? I don't know. She was at a hotel room, though. A little weird here because she posts this online. She actually did a Q&A with some reporters over the internet while she was down there. It looked like she was in bed when she was doing this. Her office has come forward with a statement regarding that since then, saying, oh, no, it's okay. She was just on a sofa. It's just a sofa, confirmed. I don't know. It looks like a bed to me. Looks like she was just in the hotel room and she was just, sitting up, with the headboard behind her and pillows or something. But okay, we'll take your word for it. If it's a sofa, it's a sofa. Still looks like a bed. Looked a little weird. And honestly, she looks a little stressed out. And then she made this comment that stressed me out just a little bit. Because she says that if the federal government uses oil and gas as a tool in the negotiations with Donald Trump, possibly even threatening to cut off the gas and oil supply to the U.S., which Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister, Melanie Joly, did assert just the day before in a different interview on the weekend. She says if that happens, Canada is going to have a national unity crisis on its hands. That's basically saying if you do that, I, as the Premier of Alberta, will proceed with some sort of action that could lead to Alberta separating from Canada.
Yesterday, Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly talked about, she was asked specifically if in negotiations with Trump, Canada would consider an energy embargo on the United States. And I want to, as leverage, what do you think, what do you make of what she said?
Well, first of all, it's oil and gas is owned by the provinces, principally Alberta, and we won't stand for that. And you should never, ever threaten something you cannot do. And I would encourage the minister to look at a map of where Line 5 goes. Line 5 comes down through Michigan to get to Sarnia. And then that feeds the bulk of the supply needed for Ontario and connects with Line 9, which feeds the bulk of the product needed for Quebec. And so if you cut off that line, you are cutting off Ontario and Quebec. So I would encourage the ministers to either understand how our integrated pipeline system works and start looking at ways that we would be able to practically respond, because there's no point in making empty threats that cannot be executed on. So there are other things, I'm sure, that that we'll all talk about collectively, but let's just remember how integrated our markets are with the Enbridge system, the TC Energy system, that we have a product going back and forth across the border every single day. And we cannot do anything that harms Canadians in such a substantial way. So I just don't take that as a credible threat. I'm sure that the U.S. administration won't either. So we should talk about things that we actually can do as opposed to empty threats.
If they were to proceed down that path for some reason, what would be Alberta's response?
Well, they will have a national unity crisis on their hands at the same time as having a crisis with our U.S. trade partners. We just won't stand for that. And I don't think Ontarians and Quebec should stand for that as well. They shouldn't be standing by and listening while a federal minister talks about cutting off their energy supply. That's just not on. That makes no sense.
I don't know. I get the Line 5 issue, but I'm not sure that this is being handled in an optimal way. I'm not sure this is smart negotiating tactics, and I'm not sure if Danielle Smith honestly is approaching it in quite the right way. Going down there with Kevin O'Leary, not elected. That guy's not elected. Anybody vote for Kevin O'Leary? Anybody who voted for Kevin O'Leary, put up your hands. Oh, no, I don't see anybody. No, because he's not an elected official. He's a business dude, a rich guy, an oligarch. That's what he's aiming to be, an oligarch. Doesn't even spend, I don't think, that much time in Canada anymore, living down in the U.S. and down at Mar-a-Lago. What's he doing down there? Is he acting in our best interests or Kevin O'Leary's best interests? I think maybe his own. Yeah. He's got big investments. I think he's got money in pipelines, pretty sure. And he wants to buy TikTok. And he needs to be in the good graces of both the Biden administration currently and the incoming administration. In order to do that, he needs Trump's approval for him and his business associates in order to take over TikTok, which would give him immense power. Twitter's X, Elon Musk, there's a guy who's got immense power as an oligarch, investing $270+ million to get himself unelected into the White House next to Donald Trump, and buying Twitter, turning it into X, giving him a worldwide voice where he has so much power now, he literally can influence elections in countries around the world because of his ownership of X. Kevin O'Leary looking for something very similar to that and not elected. Neither of these guys. But there's Kevin O'Leary down there, and maybe you're cool with it, maybe you're not. Let me know in the chat. What do you think? Is Kevin O'Leary in the right? Is this appropriate for him to be down there essentially yakking in Donald Trump's ear with the Premier of Alberta, who is down there trying to look out, I guess, for the interests of Alberta, putting Alberta first by putting America first, not necessarily Canada, depending on your point of view, and not really working with the federal government, just going down there and working on her own agenda. Doug Ford, I think Jordan Peterson was at that party as well, but I'm not sure he's been that vocal about all of the 51st state stuff and the tariffs potentially. And let's say, just keep in mind too that there's really been no declaration of a formal set of negotiations aimed at making Canada the 51st state. These are just comments offhand made by Donald Trump, although I think you do need to take them seriously because he seems serious about it, but there's no formal negotiating process in play for that. What they are talking about is the tariffs. That's the larger issue, and that seems to be tied to border security, which the federal government is already addressing. Danielle Smith down there doing I don't know exactly what, other than trying to secure more trade and inject herself into this conversation about the tariffs and the 51st state stuff. But I'm not so. It seems to me like that the premiers and the federal government should all be working together on this and then proceeding with some sort of a unified message. It might be a smarter strategy rather than going down there piecemeal individually like this, when what we're talking about here is an existential threat to Canada's sovereignty and its actual existence as a nation state. Because if this all happens in a negative way, Canada's economy could be completely undermined. Doug Ford taking a hard line with Trump, not so hard that he's, being adversarial about it, but he is saying that energy is something that is on the table as a tool, electricity generated in Ontario that feeds into the United States, might saying, yeah, I'll leave that on the table. Maybe we'll cut that off if negotiations don't proceed as they should. And then today, he's taking a more, I think, cooperative approach. He's meeting with all the premiers. He didn't go down to Mar-a-Lago on his own to sort of do an end run around Trudeau and the federal government. And today, emerging from a meeting with Canada's current finance minister, who replaced Chrystia Freeland, Dominic LeBlanc, and they had this to say as they were coming out.
First of all, thank you all for joining us. Minister LeBlanc, this has been a standing meeting with our friends here, I think, for the last 4 or 5 days. We just had a really, really positive meeting talking about tariffs, talking about border security. I saw the plan for border security. It's phenomenal. As I said to Minister LeBlanc, have Mr. McGuinty get out there and start promoting it, because it is a solid plan. We look forward to sitting down with all the premiers tomorrow, and I just want to thank Minister LeBlanc. Full disclosure, I think the world of him, and so do all the other premiers. He's very pragmatic. He understands, and he's done a tremendous job on many ministries, but especially this one. He's foregoing his leadership because he's putting Canada first, and I just want to thank you. I want to thank you for the job that you've done and how you've worked collaboratively with us for the last 6.5 years, and continue to work collaboratively together. So we're taking a Team Canada approach on this. We're going to work closely with all the other premiers along with the federal government. They play a key role. This is their file. We're there to support them. So I'll pass it over to you, Minister.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Moi, je suis très content d'être avec mon ami, le Premier ministre de l'Ontario.
This is why Trump will never take over Canada, because he won't understand
nous avons eu une discussion,
what is said.
je pense, très positive pour préparer la conversation demain à Ottawa. As a federal minister, I think the country is very lucky at this moment in the rotation of the Council of the Federation that Premier Ford is chairing the Council of the Federation. I said this to him. I said this to my colleague, his finance minister. Premier Ford has stood up for the Canadian economy, for workers across the country, in a way that frankly makes him a very valuable partner for the Government of Canada. So we talked about potential scenarios to respond to the threat of tariffs, obviously recognizing the real impact it would have on the economy of Ontario, on Ontario workers and businesses. The Government of Canada will, of course, be there to support industries and workers in collaboration with Premier Ford and his government. And tomorrow's conversation allows all of us to discuss how we can be ready next week when we see ultimately what the Americans propose. But for me to be here at Queen's Park with Premier Ford, as I say, who's become a friend of mine, somebody I'm proud to work with, somebody who stood up for our country at tough moments and is doing so again. It's a privilege to be here, and I can't imagine, Doug, that you and I are looking forward anything more than to answer questions from the journalists now.
I always do.
Yeah, no, that's why I get up in the morning.
Does the federal government have an estimate for how many job losses that could come as a result of 25% tariffs across the board on Canadian goods?
So the Finance Department has obviously done a lot of that modeling. I had a chance to talk to the CEOs of the large banks over the last 24 hours. You can imagine that they're obviously doing a lot of that modeling. The Premier and I spoke about the real impacts that these tariffs would have to workers obviously in Ontario, but across the country. We're not going to speculate on what exactly are different scenarios. Next week, we think we'll know the precise details of what these tariffs will mean to the Canadian economy, and we'll be ready, of course, to respond from a position of strength, and we hope as a unified country. But it doesn't serve any purpose. I get that everybody is imagining complicated circumstances. We're very much on the job, and we're working together. And when we see the full extent of what the American proposal is, of course, we'll respond.
En français, peut-être, est-ce que vous pensez que c'est réaliste? Doug Ford parle de 500 000 emplois en péril en Ontario. Vous pensez que c'est réaliste, ces chiffres-là?
Mais, comme j'ai dit en anglais, il y a quelqu'un qui appuie l'économie canadienne. On verra d'emplois, sur quel... So I had a chance both with the Premier and his Finance Minister to talk about how we could work together to support the Canadian economy, to support workers in Ontario and across the country and businesses when we see the scale and impact of the American action. I think people need to know that we'll work together, as we always have, with the provinces and territories to support businesses and workers. This is a circumstance that Canadian industry and Canadian workers didn't create. If the American government takes this decision, our obligation is to work together and to support the economy of the country, but also to respond in a firm, unified way. This isn't good for the American economy either. And those are the conversations that we've been having. And the Premier talked to me about conversations with governors and senators and business leaders in the United States. This is exactly the work that we can do together with Canadian business leaders. The Americans, I think, will come to understand that this sort of race to the basement doesn't help anybody. So let's figure out together how we can support Canadian workers, and we're open to all good ideas like that.
Ford, are you still of the opinion that the federal government needs needs to get its act together after hearing what the...
Well, I think I addressed that. I was talking about the border, security, and Minister LeBlanc laid out the plan. It's a fabulous plan. Let's get out there and tell the people of Canada they've worked hard on it. So what I said this morning after seeing the plan, it's a solid plan, and he's going to work, the Minister McGuinty will work hand in hand with people like Minister Kersner, our OPP, RCMP, CBSA, the U.S. Border Patrol, DEA. It's a collective, collaborative group that are going to secure our borders. But the numbers that I have seen, it's impressive, and the plan's impressive as well.
What's the plan? Get some specifics about what this plan involves.
I'll leave that up to the federal government. I'll leave that up to Minister McGuinty to get out there and put the plan in front of the Canadian people. But it's a solid plan, and if it wasn't a solid plan, I'd be saying it wasn't.
With Minister McGuinty?
I don't know him. I wouldn't know him if he walked through the door right now.
On the Premier and I went over some of the border plan. We shared that. I was at Mar-a-Lago with Howard Lutnick and Doug Burgum, two of the incoming secretaries in the new administration, and went through, like we did with the Premier, $1.3 billion of incremental spending to give the RCMP and CBSA things like high-range drones, long-range drones, surveillance towers, 80 new canine units to search fentanyl at the border, a sort of joint air command that will include new, pretty visible helicopters for the RCMP. There's a whole more boots on the ground. There'll be additional officers. A lot of this work was done between the RCMP and the OPP. Commissioner Karina has been a great partner, I know, for the RCMP and border services. So as the Premier said, if we can work with Ontario law enforcement and federal agencies, this is the kind of work that Canadians expect us to do.
Minister, what do you make of Alberta Premier Danielle Smith going down and meeting with Donald Trump? Do you feel, Premier Doug Ford has also been trying to secure a meeting as well, do you feel like premiers having meetings one-on-one with the incoming president is detrimental, or is it helpful?
Maybe the Premier wants to. So our view is that Canada needs to work together. If premiers and business leaders have contacts in the United States where they can talk to their customers, their business partners, political partners, all of that is value added if we make the case together that these tariffs will hurt the American economy, it'll hurt American consumers. It's obviously not good for the economy of Canada, and we'll be there to defend the Canadian economy and Canadian workers. But we think it's important, and that would be the meeting tomorrow, that the country work together. And as I said, Premier Ford's leadership at the Council of the Federation comes at a very important moment for the country. We're going to be working with him as the chair of the Council of the Federation. Premier Ford has been an effective advocate for the interest of the Canadian economy. So I'll continue to work with him. We talked about potentially going to Washington after we see what comes next week in terms of decisions. We may go and visit the border with Michael Kersner and others in Windsor, for example. All of these are occasions to show Canadians, and by consequence Americans as well, that we're very much on the job and share their concerns on things like border security.
But Premier Smith has specifically said that there would be a national unity crisis if energy exports were on the table. So is your government in any way considering the restriction of oil from Alberta to the United States?
So what we've said is that the only responsible thing for the national government is to acknowledge that all options are on the table. But at what point do you deploy what option, at what level? Obviously, we want to see what the American action is next week, if it comes next week. So I've been hanging around politics long enough to know that hypothetical questions are like big bear traps that you can fall into. That feels like one. But I think as I'm too big to land in a bear trap. Doug and I would. So I think we need to be ready to deploy all of the measures necessary to defend the Canadian economy, but we're not going to publicly speculate what is or what isn't an option. Let's see what the Americans do next week, and let's work with premiers and business leaders to find the best response for Canada.
This is the final question.
En ce qui a trait aux options de riposte pour le Canada, c'est sûr que toutes les options avec le premier ministre Legault.
Est-ce que c'est le bon moment d'aller en élection alors qu'il y a des rumeurs qui persistent? Est-ce que ça ne créerait pas plus d'instabilité?
So, Doug, they want me to speculate on a potential election in Ontario. So, again, that looks like another big bear trap that I'm not going to fall in. If I wanted to run for the legislature in Ontario, I'd have to live here. It's a great place to visit. I'm not a member of this legislature. The Ontario government will make the decisions they want. Le gouvernement de l'Ontario est tout à fait souverain à prendre leurs décisions comme ils voudront. L'importance pour nous, au gouvernement fédéral, c'est de travailler avec les provinces d'une façon cohérente.
Thank you.
That's great. I just want to thank Minister LeBlanc for his leadership once again. We look forward to working collaboratively with all the premiers across the country and along with the federal government. So thank you for your leadership. Right over there. Thank you.
Merci.
So that's where things stand, I guess, at the moment. We'll see what happens when Trump is sworn in. We're told the 25% tariffs could kick in like almost immediately. He says he's going to do it, like everything else, on day one. Stay tuned.
Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
So the former Prime Minister, conservative Stephen Harper, in an interview with Mark Nixon, addressed a question about what has led to the decline of the Trudeau Liberals. And he picks up on something in this interview, and I've got a short clip from it here for you that I think is very telling about what our country is really like. Justin Trudeau has been saying for a long time that Canada is the world's first post-nation state. He says it doesn't really have its own culture. And it's not true. I've argued quite the opposite, always. And Harper picks up on something here. He makes note of the fact that with this threat from Trump, which could destroy our country, it isn't even so much the economy that people are worried about. It's our culture. That's what people are really most concerned about losing. Because Canada is a unique place. Because it is worth saving. Because it is a great country. Because it is unique. And it isn't the world's first post-nation state. We are a sovereign nation. And we're different than the United States. And that's why people want to preserve it. In the end, I think even a lot of the people who are inadvertently working to tear it down, I don't believe the majority of Canadians want to tear it up and join the United States. I think the majority of people do want to save it. Here's Stephen Harper with Mark Nixon.
History a bit in perspective. You know, Trudeau came in 2015, won a big majority. We'd been in office for a decade. but he really ran as a centrist. Didn't run as a far leftist. Tried to convince everybody that all the things they liked about our government would be maintained and a few things would be changed. Of course, the government then went to the far left almost immediately and has since lost its majority in Parliament in 2019. Frankly, lost its majority in 2 consecutive elections that I personally think our party should have won, but he actually had his wings clipped. Unfortunately, then the far left party in Parliament fucked him up, which is why, this thing ended up going 5 years longer than it should have, with, frankly, a lot of damage to the country. Look, I'm obviously a biased source, but I think if you look at the economic statistics, the damage is undeniable. So, that's the situation we're in. Look, obviously bad news, but the good news is that a consequence of this has been that Canadians are really ready for a pretty significant change. And we have a strong young leader who's leading in the polls and is promising pretty dramatic change to get our economy back on track and frankly, get pride in our country back, because one of the terrible things about this government has been not just its economic policies, but its pursuit of a woke agenda that has really denigrated the country's culture and history and institution. And I think Canadians, if anything, they've reacted more strongly against that than even the economic results.
Indeed. I agree. I know a lot of people say things about Stephen Harper, as they do with all politicians, but honestly, I think Harper did a good job when he was the prime minister. In my view, he was one of the best prime ministers in Canadian history. And we went from that to Trudeau, who, under his watch, the country has now ended up more divided than ever before. And we are on the verge of potentially even losing the country. People ask me, why do you think Justin Trudeau is I don't understand. Why would you say he's the worst prime minister in Canadian history? Because of exactly this. It's when the Freedom Convoy came along and Trudeau failed to go out and even talk to the protesters. It's all he had to do. And he didn't do it. Instead, he took a more authoritarian approach because he saw what he perceived to be a potential threat to the government. And so he came down hard on the people who were there, and it was a mistake. It was absolutely a mistake. And he has been waging his own little battle as part of this greater war that I've been talking about. It's a strange, strange war that we're fighting right now, this third world war, this fifth generation warfare that's being employed. And the reason it's so strange is because sometimes the enemy is not always obvious. It's not always easy to see who your true foes are. And Trudeau made a huge mistake. He should not have reacted the way that he did. And all through his time in office as prime minister, the last 9 years, absolute disaster. Look at where we're at right now. If not for Trudeau and his policies and the division that it has caused in the country, we wouldn't be in this position. I'm certain of it right now. He's left the country vulnerable. And Harper is quite right, because unlike Trudeau, he sees the value in Canadian culture just as the people of this country do, as I'm sure most of you do as well. And yeah, Harper, he didn't always do all the right things, and he made mistakes as well, but nothing like this. Overall, he's again rightly pointing out that Canadians need to start taking pride in their country again. It's one of the things I've been saying here for since the beginning. We need to stop crapping on our own country and start taking pride in it again. Stop tearing down our statues. Stop rewriting our history in a way that paints Canada as some villainous, evil, satanic nation, because we're not. We've not been a country of conquest. We've been a country of compromise. And we can continue to be that. And I'm confident that we will be, because in the end, people are going to stand up for their country in the end. Because I think people, Canadians, deep down, even though we're pretty humble and unassuming, polite, deep down, people love this place. And they're not going to want to lose it. We don't want to lose this. The world needs Canada now more than ever before. Because there's so much terrible stuff going on in the world. We're needed. Jagmeet Singh, NDP leader, chiming in on all of this. This is, he wants to take a much harder line. I'm not sure if ultimately this is the right approach either. I will say I think Canada should immediately, and should have been a long time ago, should have been pursuing other customers for our resources, for our minerals, for our gas, for our oil, for our energy. Even overseas, sending it over on ships, liquefied natural gas, oil, refined products that we produce from our natural resources, add the value here, actually produce things in factories and refineries, and then ship half-finished product or even fully finished products exported out of the country, grow the economy that way. We've been too dependent and reliant upon and far too integrated solely with the United States since the creation of Canada. I was saying that for a long time ago, even when I was much younger. Much, much younger. Canada has so much potential, but we ship our raw resources out. We've always been a resource-based economy, whether it's just the fur trade, where, the trappers who've helped found this country and establish an economy, trap the animals, get the furs, and then they would be shipped overseas to Europe and sold there, where they would then be turned into coats and other garments and things. Before the dawn of the oil age, polyester. I don't know if that's progress. Polyester leisure suits. I don't know if that's a fashion statement or a fashion faux pas. Here's Jagmeet Singh, though, talking about how he wants to approach Donald Trump's threats.
Premiers about retaliatory tariffs on Wednesday. Would you rather see targeted tariffs or more broad-based action like the Americans are putting on Canada?
I think we need to be very strategic about our response. So we need to look at a step-by-step response that meets the tariffs in kind and that escalates the pressure that we're putting on the United States. That's why I propose starting with one thing like critical minerals, and then we can expand on that and build on that. But we need to look at how we have a response plan that goes step by step, that increases the pressure on the United States to make it clear to Donald Trump, if he picks a fight with Canada, it's going to hurt the United States as well. And it's why, again, I want to point out that that while Donald Trump is threatening Canadians, Pierre Poilievre's plan is to do nothing, to sit back and literally do nothing, because he's been endorsed by Elon Musk. He doesn't want to upset that endorsement, so he's got no interest in defending Canadian jobs.
Have you picked up the phone to call anyone in the States?
We have set up a number of meetings that are going to be happening soon. I'll let you know about them when they happen.
Are you going to, who are you meeting with? Is it governors, business leaders, union? Because Mr. Poilievre has said that ministers here and others should be picking up the phone and making this case to their American counterparts. Who are you making this case to?
We'll let you know when we have those meetings set up. But for sure, and I just want to finish up though, and I'll answer that question, then we'll wrap it up. But I want to be clear, Pierre Poilievre does not have, his plan is literally to do nothing. He's been asked about it again and again, and his plan is, no, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to do anything until an election. At a time when Canadians are desperately worried about the impact on their jobs, their cost of living, he is saying he's going to do nothing. Let's be clear, he is not interested in defending Canadian jobs because he doesn't want to upset Elon Musk, who has endorsed him. He's a bootlicker for billionaires. That's who Pierre Poilievre is.
Can I just ask you about the ballot question? Last week, Poilievre said wants to make it the carbon tax. I wonder, as you appeal to voters in French Canada and in English Canada, is it the same ballot question? What will New Democrats be really zeroing in on in the election we're going to have this spring?
Well, I think it's clear that one of the things that's evolving in the ballot question is the threat of Donald Trump. You hear that everywhere you go. People are really worried about what this means for their jobs, what this means for cost of living, what those tariffs could mean for grocery prices, for everyday bills. That's becoming more and more a serious question. And in general, the cost of living question is one that's top of mind for Canadians. They're worried about how much everything costs. Salaries have not kept up. They're worried about grocery prices. They're worried about homes and not being able to afford a home. And what more and more Pierre Poilievre seems out of touch, not responding to the real issues of the day, the threat of Donald Trump, the threat of those tariffs on Canadians and on their lives. And that's why we're going to continue to fight for Canadians to say, whenever that election happens, we're going to be ready for it. But in the meantime, we're not going to give up. We're going to fight to protect Canadian jobs. We're going to fight to protect our country. That's something that Pierre Poilievre has shown clearly a failure in leadership. Thanks so much.
One question on pharmacare.
And just when you're in a position like Trump or even Elon Musk, one thing you say, just say one thing, and it can have a major impact on the stock market, the value of the Canadian dollar even. All of this, though, through it all, the Canadian dollar, under pretty intense pressure, has managed to hold value. Today, sitting at 70 cents US. That's not like the lowest it's ever been. The dollar has been higher, substantially higher as well, but we're okay. And so that shows that internationally, there's still a lot of confidence in the Canadian economy and in the dollar itself. So we're holding our own in spite of this, I would say, verbal assault on Canada from Donald Trump. Oh, and then back to Mark Carney, the potential next Prime Minister of Canada. Ahead of Poilievre, actually, when you think about it, because if he is, whoever ends up winning the leadership of the Liberal Party will become the Prime Minister and will be everyone thought it would be Poilievre. No, it's going to be whoever wins the leadership race first. Then it'll be Poilievre, likely. Although, I'm not so sure that this next election is going to be fought as a carbon tax election. This next election may actually be fought on the issue of whether Canada will continue to exist as a nation because of what Trump is doing. And it's strange to me to see Canadians cheering for Trump when Canada's very existence is on the line. And I even heard, I like Diane Francis, columnist, saw her, was it this morning or yesterday? Can't keep it straight. My days bleed from one to the next. Anyway, she still is of the opinion that Trump is really kind of just joking. I don't think so, especially since he's saying he's not joking. There's more to this than just a joke. And it's not just about negotiating either. There is more to this. And this next it feels like divide and conquer in a lot of ways. I'm not so sure that Donald Trump wants to actually take over Canada, but there is more going on here. And Canada has already been destabilized simply because of these comments that he made. And then for Danielle Smith to come out and say that if the federal government, you're going to have a national unity crisis on your hands. That's like the Premier of Alberta threatening to separate from Canada. If the federal government tries to use the natural resources from her province as one of the bargaining chips in the upcoming negotiations with Donald Trump. You've already got the separatist movement, which is pretty strong in Quebec still today. You see, you've got those separatists in Quebec. You've got the Westies out there who want to separate from Canada, have for a long time. You can't tell me that there isn't something more going on here. Somebody's trying to rip this country apart. Make no mistake. I don't know that if it will be successful, but somebody's up to no good. I can smell it, and it don't smell good. It smells kind of rotten. And there is this battle, this war between this new political ideology or whatever it is, and populist movement. It comes in many, many names because it's not really being fully divulged or revealed to people. Because I think people are being deceived to some degree. Nevertheless, you've got them fighting the neoliberal progressive movement. And as Mark Carney positions himself for a run at the leadership, already the knives are out, the political barbs are flying, and he does represent actually a real threat to Poilievre, I think, because he has this image of being a banker, a business guy, an economist who understands how economics and business and international relations and the international markets work, banking, money. And that's been Pierre Poilievre's strong suit. Now, if the Liberals select Carney, you've got two guys with that sort of image. At least that's the way Canadians will perceive it. Even though Carney is more of a progressive, but he could be a progressive in conservatives' clothing, where Poilievre is a conservative, maybe in populist clothing, and who knows what we're really going to end up with. It's kind of like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And that's why the pro-conservative streamers out there are already digging up old clips of Mark Carney at the World Economic Forum, where he's saying that he doesn't even consider himself, when speaking to an international audience, a Canadian, because he was working at the Bank of Canada and he's working at the UN. He considers himself to be a European. So they're trying to use this against him already, and the attacks will ramp up in the days ahead.
Mark, you looked like you were about to.
Old clip.
Yeah, it was a tell.
As a European, as a
European, I am a European, actually.
Oh, you are?
Yeah,
Oh.
I'm Irish citizen. Yeah, so there
welcome.
you go.
Welcome.
Speaking as a European, I'd like to say the following.
Mark, you look.
And they clip it there, so I don't know what else he might have said there, because I don't recall seeing that particular appearance at the WEF. But there it is. The attacks begin. And that's politics, because, as I've said many times, politics is a blood sport. And right now they're going for the throat. It's going to get bloody and ruthless and cold, vicious. All right, let's move on. What else do we have tonight? Oh yeah, EV mandates, electric vehicles. Yeah, Canada's auto companies are calling for an end to electric vehicle sales mandates. And they're asking for this because of the pause that's being put on the federal electric vehicle incentive programs. And because of the slow build-out of charging infrastructure. And that has been an ongoing problem, even acknowledged by, the automakers themselves are saying there just isn't enough, and there are problems with the charging stations, and I can attest to that myself. Not that I own an electric vehicle, but I have driven some, and yeah, the charging stations, it's a problem. So the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association, Global Automakers of Canada, Canadian Automobile Dealers Association, they've all come together and they've put forward this request to the government that these EV sales mandates be scrapped because the incentive program is coming to an end. And their comment today is, quote, mandating Canadians to buy zero-emission vehicles without providing them the supports needed to switch to electric is a made-in-Canada policy failure. That from the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. That's Brian Kingston, the head of that group, which represents Ford, GM, and Stellantis. And in Canada, the government has mandated that 20% of all new vehicles sold will need to be electric by 2026 and 100% by 2035. And I would say Canadians don't want that. certainly not at that like 20% by, well, within a year, the end of this year, 20% of all vehicles sold. It's going to have unintended consequences on the market itself, the auto industry. The car consumers will be acting in very unusual ways. It's going to create a shortage of gasoline-powered vehicles. You're not going to be able to get them. And I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play out. I got to think about how the economics with the supply and demand and the mandates will all come together and what it's going to mean for consumers. Well, so we'll keep an eye on that. Transport Canada has indicated that it's halting the incentive program in Canada. It has been offering rebates of up to $5,000 for people who buy or lease electric vehicles. And they're doing this because funding for the program has run out in advance of the March 31st pause. And that's because, the market is being skewed, and they've been selling these, a little more of these things than they initially thought they were going to, but that's because of the mandates themselves. 546,000 vehicles, according to these documents I'm looking at here right now, have been sold or leased with incentives through the program since it began in 2019. And EVs currently account for 11.7% of Canada's market. Now, actually, it's up to 16%. They hit 16% in the third quarter of last year. So I suppose 20% is an achievable target, but only if the government mandates this stuff. And if they reduce these, if they take these, the $5,000 rebate for people off, you'll see a decline, I would say, in sales. So we'll see where this all goes. I think I still am of the opinion that it's just too much, too fast. And it's being government driven, not market driven. So it isn't really what people ultimately want. Just looking, overseas here in the latest developments, Ukraine has conducted what is being reported as its deepest strike yet into Russian territory, targeting military and industrial sites across 12 regions. The operation involved around 200 drones and missiles, including U.S.-made ATACMS and UK-made Storm Shadow missiles, hitting from Bryansk to Tatarstan. Key targets included oil refineries, chemical plants, and air defense systems, all of it aimed to disrupt Russia's military capabilities. Russia has confirmed intercepting some of the attacks and has threatened retaliation, hinting at a potential escalation in the conflict. And that is exactly what we have been seeing in the last number of weeks. And it's intensifying as we get closer and closer to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And the reason for that is both sides are trying to position themselves in the strongest possible way heading into possible talks with the Trump administration, or Donald Trump. Here's some video showing the impact from some of these strikes deep into Russian territory over the last 24 hours by Ukraine. And here we go.
После атаки дронов,
attacking
14 января 25
oil infrastructure again. And this is not the entirety of it. This is just part of what has been happening. And it's increasingly clear that Putin is not in as strong a position as some people may think he is. There's intense pressure even from within Russia itself on the ground against the war, right? Just as there is here in North America too. And on the ground in Ukraine, the fighting has intensified. As I said, Ukrainian forces have reported significant Russian losses, with 1,330 soldiers, 3 tanks, 11 armored fighting vehicles, and 47 artillery systems destroyed in the last 24 hours alone. The total count of Russian personnel losses since the invasion began in February of 2022 now stands at approximately 811,000. Civilian casualties continue to mount, with at least 2 deaths and 19 injuries, including children reported from recent Russian attacks. Ukrainian defenses managed to down 58 out of 80 drones launched by Russia. I hate even speaking about this in this way because it sounds almost like it's just giving sports scores, but real lives are being affected by this, and people are being killed in this war. It's not entertainment. It is not a sporting event. In Moscow, there's been a notable incident, actually, involving Russian security forces. Vladimir Feshchenko, an FSB counterintelligence officer, has been found dead in a Ministry of Defense building. And initial reports suggest he was killed by a colleague during an altercation or possibly an accidental shooting while they were drinking together. This highlights tensions or possibly even instability within Russia's own ranks. And on the political front, this is of real note, heading into the inauguration and potential talks between Trump and Putin. Nikolai Patrushev, a close aide to Vladimir Putin, has made bold claims that Ukraine might cease to exist by 2025 due to what he says are internal crises and Western manipulation. He insists on exclusive negotiations between Russia and the United States to resolve the Ukrainian issue, excluding other Western powers. Of course he does. And this statement coming from him has stirred considerable debate over its implications for peace prospects and geopolitical strategy. Of course he only wants the U.S. involved. That's because support through Russian information war efforts have been very effective at undermining a lot of the support for Ukrainian aid. European countries see Russia as more of a threat, and they remain more supportive of Ukrainian defense. That's why Russian officials don't want European countries involved in any peace talks. They want it all U.S.-Russia. And that's also because it's very clear that on some level, Donald Trump is sympathetic, shall we say, to Vladimir Putin. What else do we have for you tonight? Oh, yes, also, Ukraine. I just showed you the other night that Russia had taken a town where in Ukraine they had the largest lithium deposits and mines in all of Europe. And Russia seized that, now controlling those resources. And there are now mounting concerns about the viability of Ukraine's coal industry and its steel industry, because Russia has, over time, taken control of the coking coal produced out of Ukraine, which is used in the production of steel. Ukraine was forced to shut down coal production near the city of Pokrovsk in the Donbass, and since then, Ukrainian coal production has dropped, and their steel production as a result has also dropped because the coal is used to power the steel industry. Ukraine's steel output apparently dropped to as low as 2 million metric tons this year, compared to 7.6 million tons produced in 2024. And that's putting pressure on the Ukrainian economy, just as Ukraine is trying to put pressure on the Russian economy by shutting down those gas and oil pipelines that feed into Europe. And in fact, that actually is detrimental to Ukraine as well, because the money that Russia was paying Ukraine for the transit fees on those pipelines no longer flowing to Ukraine. So it's hitting both countries, but hitting Russia harder. And the European countries that were receiving that energy now having a lot of that replaced from North American and other sources. So they've had time to adjust for that. I think they've replaced 80% of that supply pretty quickly. It also shows that Justin Trudeau also doesn't really entirely understand business because, well, other countries over the last, couple of years have actually ramped up production of liquid natural gas production and have built actual transfer facilities and transportation facilities for liquefied natural gas. Canada also asked about it, but has not responded in kind, not as efficiently. We don't have those facilities up and running as quickly as some other producers around the world have in order to supply the European market. But that's a little sidebar, which we may comment more on in the days ahead. Tonight, more updates and a weird post from Donald Trump about the wildfire situation out in LA. Stay with me.
Maverick News. Fighting for freedom. Greetings, brave Mavericks. Our quest for truth continues. We go beyond fake news. Together we expose propaganda. Together we pull others out of rabbit holes. We are maverick thinkers. We are all unique individuals, defenders of individual rights and freedoms, credible, trusted, grounded in reality. Maverick News, Maverick News. Defending free speech, free speech. Donate at freedomreporters.com. Do it now. Tomorrow may be too late. Maverick News. The world is watching.
Okay, so what's the situation out in California? Well, it remains critical. We've had another day here with no significant rain in sight. The Palisades fire, which has now scorched 23,713 acres, is only 17% contained. And the fire there has been particularly destructive, with reports indicating it's one of the most damaging in Los Angeles County's history. The Eaton fire, burning in Altadena, has consumed over 14,000 acres and is 1/3 contained. That's significant progress, and these fires have led to tragic outcomes, with the death toll now rising to 25 and over 12,400 structures damaged or destroyed. Los Angeles is under a particularly dangerous situation. Red flag warning due to expected strong Santa Ana winds, which could exacerbate the situation by spreading the fires further. Firefighters from across the nation, including teams from Mexico and Canada, have been deployed, bringing the total firefighting force to over 16,800. They are supported by 1,400 fire engines, 84 aircraft, and numerous bulldozers, all working around the clock to contain the blazes. Evacuation orders remain in effect for 92 100,000 residents of Los Angeles, with an additional 89,000 under evacuation warnings ready to leave at a moment's notice. The city has declared a public health emergency due to the hazardous air quality from the smoke and ash. Economically, the impact is staggering. Initial estimates suggest the total cost could reach between $250 to $275 billion, potentially marking this as the costliest natural disaster in U.S. history. In response, Governor Newsom, who was under attack by Donald Trump and others, has taken steps to suspend certain environmental regulations to aid in quicker rebuilding efforts. Oh, and in other developments, 3 individuals have been arrested on suspicion of arson, highlighting the complexity of managing the fires amidst potentially criminal activities. Also, looters arrested too. Reports of burglaries by individuals disguised as firefighters exploiting the chaos for personal gain are out there. Lots of reports. And the National Weather Service forecasts that the severe fire weather conditions will continue through at least Wednesday, with the possibility of light rain not until next week. Until then, the focus remains on containment and safety. I have this queued up. I thought we'd do a little Twitter scroll, X scroll, through this page, California wildfire tracking. And as you can see here, it says that the Eaton fire is now knocked down with smoke no longer showing on cameras. So they are making progress finally in bringing that under some degree of control. It says here we are currently tracking a new start in Chatsworth, LA County. This is the Eaton fire reported at 100 by 100 in grass and scattered brush, with good progress being made. Nearby railroad tracks were requested to be shut down, but are currently now open. And you can see there some smoke if you look very closely. So this is probably where they're talking about the new fire startup. It says here, this is known as the Stone Fire. Resources are now working on mop-up, and all aircraft have been released. And this will be the final update here on California wildfire tracking, unless conditions change. A distant shot of the smoke rising, and that does not give you, I'm sure, the full intensity of it, because it is from this image shot from so far back. Yeah. And the Angeles National Forest is closed because of the fires. And another image with flames in the background. None of this actually on this page does give you a real sense of the devastation that people have endured there. Because so many people have lost houses. Tens of thousands now seeking aid. And I have to say, this is a little bit weird to me. We're seeing Trump Republicans saying that aid to California should only be offered with conditions. That makes me uncomfortable. You have people in need, people who have had their homes burned out. The aid ultimately, if we're talking about aid to people, it's supposed to go to the people. And a lot of people are very concerned, obviously, about whether they'll be able to rebuild their homes, where they're going to sleep tonight and the next night. And the Biden administration has come up with some immediate aid, not adequate. not adequate in order for people to carry on there in any really meaningful way. But there's more on the way, hopefully. And when Trump comes into office, you can say what you want. To me, it doesn't even matter if Gavin Newsom is the biggest screw up in U.S. history, or if the politicians there who were elected have been incompetent in whatever way. The point is, you have thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have been burned out of their homes and they need help. And so I don't think it's any time, honestly, for the federal government to be saying, oh, we're only going to give aid to the people if this municipal government or this state government falls into line and does what we tell you to do. I don't think it's proper. The most important thing is get the aid to the people who need it. Figure out what the need is and address it. That's my position on it. There may be circumstances where you're looking at more long-term funding for other things, and Trump is coming back into power. And yeah, if he wants California to affect, I don't know, brush cleaning operations in the future, he can play politics with that stuff. But right now, if you're sitting there homeless because your house has been burned down and you have insurance problems, and you've got kids, and you maybe can't even afford to get into a hotel, I think the last thing you want to be hearing about is somebody saying, well, we're only going to provide aid if these certain conditions are met by these other politicians that we don't get along with. And it works both ways. Both sides need to work together just to help the people. Whatever it takes, man. Just help the people. That's what government is supposed to do. What the hell else were you elected for? Period. And then you get back to fighting politics later. Well, that's the problem, John. See, it's like he says, I never heard a Liberal complain about helping Helene in Florida, Hurricane Vic 8. I know. Well, I mean, it works both ways. You know, Hurricane Katrina, and I remember the Democrats came after the Republicans. I remember, Bush being attacked for exactly these same things. Both sides politicize these things, and people are caught in the middle. And it's not right. There's no time to play politics. Not, especially not when you got this level of destruction. Elon Musk sued by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Unbelievable. Well, no, it's believable. It's entirely believable. Everything is believable these days. Here, look at this, NBC. This is their version of the story. According to the SEC complaint, Musk did not follow disclosure rules, allowing him to underpay by at least $150 million for shares he purchased after his financial beneficial ownership report was due. Sued for alleging failure to properly disclose Twitter ownership. The SEC filed a lawsuit against Elon Musk on Tuesday, alleging the billionaire committed securities fraud in 2022 by failing to disclose his ownership in Twitter and buying shares at artificially low prices. Didn't he end up? I thought he was paying more than it was worth. And then he complained and said that it probably wasn't the best investment he had ever made. It was kind of stupid because he spent so much to buy it. But they're saying here he was buying shares at artificially low prices. Of course, this is in 2022. Okay, so it says Musk, who is also CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, purchased Twitter for $44 billion, later changing the name of the social network to X. Prior to the acquisition, he'd built up a position in the company of greater than 5%, which would have required disclosing his holding to the public. According to the SEC complaint, Musk didn't follow disclosure rules, allowing him to underpay by at least $150 million for shares he purchased after his financial beneficial ownership report was due. And the SEC has been investigating whether Musk or anyone else working with him committed securities fraud in 2022 as the Tesla CEO sold shares in his car company and shored up his stake in Twitter ahead of his leveraged buyout. Musk said in a post on X last month that the SEC issued a settlement demand, pressuring him to agree to a deal including a fine within 48 hours or, quote, face charges on numerous counts regarding the purchase of shares. All this as Elon Musk sits poised, ready to take a position in the White House and assume an influential role in government as head or co-head of the Department of Government Efficiency. What could possibly go wrong? No conflict of interest there. He only relies on government contracts for the existence of his companies. And then you're putting this guy in charge of government expenditures, government contracts, which he relies on for his company. So there'll be new rules for everybody, maybe but him. You can't make this stuff up. And people are like, yay! And including people who are like, I hate big corporations and I hate capitalism and I hate... This isn't really capitalism. This is oligarchy. That's what it is. This is a new form of oligarchy. And actually related to the wildfire story, this post tonight caught my attention from Donald Trump. I'm not sure what to make of this. I'm not exactly sure what he's saying. I think you can kind of read into it. He says, oh, geez, I think I just lost the thing. No, there it is. All right. Where'd you go? Okay, gotcha. So he posted this, and it's just a recent post within the last couple of hours. He says, the actual irony, a homeowner consents to pay property taxes that will go to the fire department. The funds are diverted to illegal immigrants because LA is a sanctuary city. An illegal immigrant comes and sets your house on fire, and the fire department doesn't have the resources to put it out. The homeowner paid for their own destruction. On top of that, the government is so inept that the insurance companies won't insure houses here anymore. So the homeowner is left with nothing. So he's getting a twofer in there. One, he gets to criticize the state government out in California and Newsom again. And he takes a shot at immigrants. Is that fair? I don't know. At least, is that what he's saying? That these fires, or some of them, or maybe a bunch of them, are caused by immigrants? Is that fair? I don't know. I have seen that there have been some people arrested, but I don't know if that comment is accurate or if that's, again, politics being played. There might be some truth in it, but it feels like politics to me. And it doesn't feel like, it feels kind of like dark politics to me. A little bit nasty. Oh, yeah. Oh, this is hilarious. To me, it's funny because it's just so, again, you can't make this stuff up. And it's been right in front of us the whole time. The Village People, they're going to be performing during Trump's inauguration at a number of events. I find it's funny because the Trump has always used the YMCA song at the end of his rallies, right? And people dance, and he does his own little Trump dance to it. And I just find it ironic. I find it funny because while they're using that song, there is, let's just be honest, there is this terrible undercurrent of anti-gay sentiment within the MAGA movement. And while that's very present to me, and I find that frankly distasteful, I understand the drag queen story time issue because you're talking about children, right? In situations where, it's maybe just not appropriate. It isn't appropriate. So I understand. But there's just an undercurrent of anti-gay in some elements, some parts of the new political movement. And it's also part of, some people feeling that they have new license to just be jerks, a-holes, and say terrible things about people, whatever. But I just find it funny because the YMCA song, folks, is a gay anthem. Now, I always thought, I find it funny because I always thought that the YMCA song was a sign that Trump and MAGA, it's because they were being misjudged. And for the most part, I think that's largely true for the people involved, where they're not homophobic, right? And that's why they're like, hey, it's cool with me if it's the YMCA song. But I don't know. I think people are not cluing in. Maybe they're not aware that the YMCA song is a gay anthem from the Village People, which has always appealed to the gay community. It is. It's a gay anthem. The song was released. I looked up some information on it today, just to make sure I've got my facts straight. Song released in 1978, the YMCA song, and that was at a time when, the gay rights movement was gaining momentum. YMCA became an anthem for the gay community in the late 70s. The Village People themselves were known for their flamboyant, campy style, which resonated with gay audiences. And the song's lyrics actually describe the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, as a place where young men can find companionship, fun, and a place to stay. Historically, YMCAs were also known, sort of with a wink and a nod and a nudge, as places where gay men could meet discreetly. All this before the era of openly gay bars and clubs. If you want to know about those, just ask Johnny. He's been to lots of gay bars. The song's references to communal living and social interaction, he'll tell you all about it. The song's references to communal living and social interaction can be seen as coded language for gay experiences. He's talked about it on the show. He was on that long call with me about it. And the Village People's performances, with their choreographed dances and costumes, including the construction worker, the policeman, the cowboy, that all plays into this, gay male culture, which really sort of celebrates like a hyper masculine archetype in a playful and subversive way. And the YMCA song has been embraced by the gay community in various pride events, dance clubs, celebrations. And, straight people dance and sing it, and they do the YMCA thing with their arms when they're dancing too. But it's a gay anthem. So you have, I think, this is why I think it's funny, because you have homophobic people, not all of them, but you do have some homophobic people who are like dancing to the gay anthem. I just think it's ironic. Again, you can't make it up. But I'm glad they used the YMCA song, and the Village People are going to be performing, and this is why I'm talking about this, because they're going to be performing at the inauguration, and it could be a very positive thing because they're doing it hoping that it helps bring the country together, because it's a unifying thing, and it's cool with me. I'm going to check in the chat. I have to go over to the Rumble channel to look. Hang on just a minute here. What are you guys saying about this tonight? Anything? Let me just see here. Here we go. Come on. Computer's a little sluggish. At least we've got our internet back tonight. Yeah, Almach says the disco era, yeah. And I just scroll back a little bit, start a little bit earlier here. And it's so screwed for sure, says Almach. I don't know. Be Lovely says, I agree with Rick. Whatever you're agreeing with me on, thank you. I'll take all the agreement I can get. You know, there's not much of that going on these days. Yeah, I don't know. And Dragon says propaganda even in music. I don't know. Anything on YouTube here? Just look in here. And Alicia Smith says, I thought all the members were gay. Actually, no. I think only 2 of the people in the Village People were actually gay or are actually gay. Who was it? Yeah, because I think it was the guy who started the band, Jacques Morali, and the lead singer, Victor Willis. They've acknowledged the song's appeal to the gay community. But I think there's only 2 of the guys that have actually come out and said that they're actually gay. Anyway, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Maybe they are all gay and they just didn't say, I don't know. But it's definitely, we all know that it's a gay anthem. So be it. And it's just, and this is what they dance to at the end of the Trump rallies. It's just okay. It's just good. Good. And I'm glad that the Village People are performing there. But some people are upset about it. This is the other thing that just makes it ironic, because you have some people literally up there saying on social media, posting that it's disgusting. Some people are saying that they should be ashamed to have the Village People performing. Other people are happy about it. It's just, it's funny as all hell to me. Here's the post. Can I get this up on the screen? I think I can. We'll read some of the comments here. Most of these are positive. Here we go. Can I make this bigger? Yeah. All right, I've got it. I got it on screen. Let's go through the Facebook posts on this is Victor Willis's page. It says here, we're announcing today that the Village People have accepted an invitation from President-elect Trump's campaign to participate in inaugural, oh, come on back here. In inaugural activities, including at least one event with President-elect Trump. We know this won't make some of you happy to hear. However, we believe that music is to be performed without regard to politics. Our song YMCA is a global anthem that hopefully brings the country together after a tumultuous and divided campaign where our preferred candidate lost. This is the other thing that's funny. They wanted Kamala Harris to win, and Trump's using their song. They should be voting for Trump because, but they wanted the other person to win. Therefore, we believe it's now time to bring the country together and with music, which is why Village People will be performing at various events as part of the 2025 inauguration of Donald J. Trump. And this person says, congratulations. And this person, Blake, says, you would think that as a band founded and focused around queer culture, you'd have a little more respect for queer people, not to mention a backbone for yourself. Jacqueline Easley, wishing you guys the best performance. Nothing wrong with performing for the president's inauguration. Janet Hill says, it's time to get back to taking care of each other and stop hating others over politics. Thank you for doing this and showing we can all agree on a lot. It's time to show who we are as people. Love one another. Right on. And Amador Garcia, much, much blessings to all. Unity is what the United States of America needs, plus unity around the world, and plus stop blaming each other. The people leading the world are not perfect, but they all should have the best interests of the people honorably. It's like, what's the perfect color or the best investment, blah, 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 yeah. And Jerry Weinberg Hassan says, the Village People stand for acceptance, tolerance, respect for others. Donald Trump stands for none of that. Why would you want to normalize someone who is a rapist, felon, hateful, racist, misogynistic person who is only interested in his own personal gain? It's nasty. Evan Thomas says, oh God, no, stop normalizing him. The man is corrupt, immoral, felon with idiotic ideas, and the more we act like it's business as usual, the worse it will get. And it gets nastier and nastier. Ann Pavlos says, at best, Trump is a laughingstock around the world. Showing up for these events will make you laughingstocks as well. Goodbye, career. That's your new legacy. Cancel culture on steroids. Arthur Ebers says, ready to rock in the new year with a new president. Thanks for playing for us. It goes on. I don't know if you could see any of that, but there's the comments. You couldn't see it, so I'll show you now. And these are all on the Facebook page, which I was able to actually get access to tonight for you, so that's a good thing. And yeah, and Ryan Lucas here says, I was hoping this was going to happen. I am so happy for you guys. I was also hoping Sam Moore was going to make it. A little emotional because of his death. I love you guys. And it's going to be great. Love you, brother. And there you have it. Love him, hate him. It's politics. It's music. Just dance like nobody's watching. And pray for America. I want the country to come together, and I want the United States to flourish. I want whoever is president to be successful so that the country is successful. And I want Canada to be successful too. And I don't want Canada to break up. I want Canada to prosper. Don't let all this talk of the 51st state and the tariffs scare you to the point where we end up divided. No. Yeah, the world needs us now more than ever. They need Canada and they need the United States. And with that, folks, we're going to wrap it up tonight. And we're going to wrap it up in a positive way because we need more positivity and you need to take pride in your country. And with that, we're going to leave you with Bringing Back America by Maverick and the News Brothers tonight. I'll see you back here 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night on The Flip Side.
Down in the heart of Dixie where the rivers meet the land, there's a whisper on the wind, a call to take a stand. We're rolling out of town with our boots up on the floor, searching for the freedom that we've been longing for. We're riding on the open road with the stars as a guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans wide with foam, we're saving America, bringing freedom back home. Got my guitar in the back and a flag flying high, we're singing songs of glory under the big old sky. From the south to the north, from the east to the west, we're on a mission to put our nation to the test. We're riding on the open road with the stars as a guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans wide with foam, we're saving America, bringing freedom back home. There's a fire nation that won't die. We're the sons and daughters of the red, white, and sky. But every mile we travel with our boots up on the floor, we're healing the land and making freedom lean. We've seen the cities, we felt the country's pain, but we're not giving up, we've got so much to gain. With our hands on the wheel and our eyes on the prize, we're gonna lift this nation back to the skies. We're riding on the open road with the stars as a guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans while we foam, we're saving America, bringing freedom back home. So here's to the journey, here's to the fight, for the land of the free and the home of the light. With our boots on the ground and our hearts in the sky, we'll keep on rolling till freedom never dies. To the journey, here's to the fight, for the land of the free and the home of the light. With our boots on the ground and our hearts in the sky, we'll keep on rolling till freedom never dies. We're riding on the open road with the stars as our guide, restoring pride in America with every mile we ride. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans while we foam, we're saving America, bringing freedom back home. We're healing never dies, we're healing never dies.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.